up right where we left off, if you would.
Well, I remember that there was a mention of St. Augustine. When I preach, I never lose an opportunity to talk about St. Augustine. All of my parishioners know about that now. They're probably sick to death of St. Augustine. I wrote my thesis on St. Augustine. But anyway, I remember this marvelous line in his Confessions where he talks about how he was seeking God outside of himself. I was seeking you outside, but you were within me, and I was seeking for you everywhere else. And then you gleamed, and you glowed, and you scattered my blindness, right? Well, that's what was happening through the beauty of the Roman Catholic liturgy. See, there was this dazzling thing that allowed me to see farther than just the intellective part, and all of the studies and the books allowed me to see.
Okay. Before we take some of our first phone calls and emails, let's go back to this other issue that, as an early man, actually first drove you away from the Lutheran faith, and that is this issue of the depravity of the will.
Yes.
Luther described our state as piles of horse manure covered with snow, as God's righteousness is imputed to us, yet always underneath depraved.
Yes.
And of course, one of the passages that's often used to emphasize that is a very familiar passage from Romans 3 that says, "None is righteous, no, not one. No one understands. No one seeks for God. All have turned aside. Together they have gone wrong. No one does good, not even one." And so that is emphasized amongst Calvinists too. As a Catholic, how do we understand this issue?
Well, as Catholics, we have a very different understanding of the fall of man. It's everybody's experience that we're fallen.
Right.
There's nobody who can dispute that. Just 5 seconds of reflection can show that. Just how hard it is to learn things, how difficult it is to choose to do one thing that's good or one thing that's wrong. We all know that we're fallen, and we're all in this together. And so something happened. Now, did that completely corrupt us? Well, no, it didn't. We did fall, and we lost all sorts of wonderful privileges and gifts that God had given to us. But we were wounded in that fall. We weren't totally corrupted. So there are wounds to our intellect and wounds to our will, so that it's difficult for us to know what is good and right and true. And then when we reason to it through the difficult tangles of our mind, or we are given help by authority, and we come to understand what's good and right and true, then we have to struggle to will to want that thing. And so we are fallen, but we're good.
Called to perfection.
Yes.
Called to holiness, which is an interesting statement.
And Christ tells us that it's possible to do. Why else would he say, "Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect," unless there was some... what kind of cruel joke would it have been to ask us to be perfect if we couldn't?
In fact, this may be one reflection, again, from those passages in 1 John, where on the one hand he says, if we say we have no sin, we're just deceiving ourselves, we're lying to God.
Yes.
But then he follows it up and says, but the reason I'm writing this to you is
so that you do not sin.
Yes. So what's he assuming there?
And it's assuming that it's possible to not sin.
By grace.
By grace.
By grace.
Absolutely.
Let's take our first